Phylogenies. I think that's how you pronounce it. So further information, as always, you can go to phylogenetics and biodiversity. So a phylogeny is an evolutionary history of a specific group of organisms or their genes. A phylogeny can be represented using a phylogenetic tree, which is a diagram showing lines of descent among organisms or their genes. Each line drawn on the axis of a tree represents a lineage, which is a continuous series of descendants of a particular species or population. And when a lineage divides into two, it is represented as a node or split on the phylogenetic tree. The more splits there are over time, the more branches there will be on the tree, with the common ancestor of all the organisms in the tree being represented by the root of the tree. So that's the root is the common ancestor. And phylogenetic trees may portray the evolutionary history of all life forms, a major evolutionary group, e.g. insects, or an even smaller group of closely related species. It can describe large groups or small groups. Within a tree, any group of species designated by name is a taxon, e.g. humans, primates, mammals, or vertebrates. And a taxon that consists of all its evolutionary descendants is a clade. And closely related species are referred to as sister species, and closely related clades are sister clades. Yeah, and I just had a quick search on Google. I think it's pronounced Clade. Well, that's what they say, Clade, so not Clade. So continue back that up. So, and a taxon that consists of its evolutionary descendants is a clade. And closely related species are referred to as sister species, and closely related clades are sister clades. So a clade, from the Greek klados or branch, also known as a monophyletic group or natural group, is a group of organisms that are monophyletic, that is composed of a common ancestor and all its lineal descendants or lineage on a phylogenetic tree. And let's look at the diagram just to make sense of all this. So a cladiogram or cladogram, I think it's pronounced. Yeah, it's pronounced cladogram. So versus the clade. So a clade is a cladogram or family tree of a biological group. The last common ancestor is the vertical line stem at the bottom. The blue and red subgroups are clades and monophyletic. So the blue and red. So this one here is the last common ancestor, or more specifically, the vertical line stem. So this is the last common ancestor, and each one of these is a node. There's a node when they split. So yeah, so look at the node right there. When a lineage divides into two, it is known as a node or split. So node or split, and that's a divide. So this lineage right here, or this lineal descendants right here, or this line, basically going all the way down, is the last common ancestor of all of them. But then each one of these has a common ancestor. Each one of these lineage has a common ancestor here, and this is a clade. So what you have is, so the blue and red subgroups are clades, which are monophyletic. Each of its common ancestor stems at the bottom of the subgroup branch. So you have this blue and red these are clades, like that. And going back to the clade, so right here, a clade, also known as a monophyletic group or natural group, is a group of organisms that are monophyletic, that is composed of a common ancestor and all its linear descendants. So this one composes all of them. So that is a clade. The green one is not a clade. That's the key thing. So the green one right here, the green subgroup is not a clade. Let's put that here, not. Okay, it is a paraphyletic group because it excludes the blue branch, which has descended from the same common ancestor. The green subgroup together with the blue one forms a clade. Yes, it's not a clade. Not a clade or not a clade. So because this one right here, so this is the same, let's say this is the same common ancestor line right here of the green one, but then this cuts off the blue. So this is, you're excluding that. But if you include the blue, if you include this blue, now you have a clade, or clade. Now you have a C. But if you don't include it, then it's not, because it's paraphyletic. In other words, it's not monophyletic. Paraphyletic is not composed of all of its lineal descendants. Yeah, some of them are excluded, so this one would be excluded from the green one. So I continue further. Very fascinating. So a phylogenetic tree showing the domains of bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes based on RNA genes. Yeah, so let's look at how this setup is. This is bacteria on this blue, and they have a same common ancestor. So all of life supposedly has the same common ancestor. So bacteria over here, the different types here splits up, and here's archaea. Yeah, so there's archaea over here, the red, and there's different types of it here, different types of the bacteria here. There's different types of archaea, and there's a eukaryota. So that big domain that includes pretty much all the animals. There's slime modes, and there's animals there, includes fungi, plants, etc. So animals, plants, the big ones, and then all the other smaller bacteria, usually smaller organisms, are in the archaea bacteria. There's also some other ones over here, slime molds, and so on. Going further, so a phylogenetic tree is actually before that. Yes, remember this eukaryotes have a nucleus in the cells, and these ones don't. They don't have a nucleus, so in other words, they're prokaryotes. So these would be prokaryotes. So this is how do you spell this one? Prokaryotes. Like that. So this is prokaryotes. Don't have the cell nucleus, and lots of them are unicellular, I believe. So continue further. So phylogenetic trees are the basis for comparing and grouping different species. Different species that share a feature inherited from a common ancestor are described as having homologous features. Homologous features may be any heritable traits such as DNA sequence, protein structures, anatomical features, and behavior patterns. A vertebral column or vertebral column or backbone is an example of a homologous feature shared by all vertebrate animals. And MES note, homology is similarity due to shared ancestry between a pair of structures or genes in different taxa, or plural of taxons. So whenever there's a name to the phylogenetic tree, so within a tree, any group of species designated by a name, that's key. I'll just bold that. Designated by name is a taxon. So you put humans, primates, etc. Those all just taxon. Continue further. So homology is similarity due to shared ancestry between a pair of structures or genes in different taxa, or plural for taxon. Plural of taxon. And here is some interesting setup here. Let's just make this a bit smaller. All right, so here is some homologous setup here. So the principle of homology, the biological relationships shown by colors of the bones in the forelimbs or the front limbs of vertebrates were used by Charles Darwin as an argument in favor of evolution. So if you have humans right here, notice notice the red bone, there's the yellows, and there's this white over here. Notice how they match up. So look at the dog one, similar hand setup. There's the bird, similar hand and bone setup, and there's the whale, literally a giant human, which is quite fascinating setup here. So interestingly, the dog looks like a human too, but the one that looks most like human is this whale. All right, so now that is some fascinating stuff to ponder about. Let's continue further. So let's continue further now. Let's look at traits here. So traits that have a similar form or function but were not derived from a common ancestor are described as analogous features as opposed to homologous. So homologous are similar, and that's because of shared ancestry between a pair of structures. But if they're similar without having this shared common ancestor, or they're not derived from the same ancestry, they could just be described as analogous features. This is very interesting. So phylogenies can be reconstructed for a group of organisms of primary interest, which are called the in-group. A species or group that is closely related to the in-group but is phylogenetically outside of it is called the out-group, which serves a reference point in the tree. The root of the tree is located between the in-group and the out-group. So basically going over this, phylogenies, you can be reconstructed for whatever desired classification that you want. So, for example, if you want a primary interest and you want to classify it, you classify this as the in group right here. And if you have another related group, but it's phylogenetically outside of it, it's called the out group right here. So a simple cladogram showing the evolutionary relationships between 4 species, A, B, C, and D. Here, species A is the out group, and species B, C, and D form the in group. So there's a primary interest you have here. There's another outside group over there. And the interesting part here is the root of the tree is located between the in group and the out group. So the way that it's set up like this, you could this actually means that the root is over here, is in between them. We'll get to that in a bit here. So here is just to illustrate that they mean the same thing. So a cladogram, from Greek klados, meaning branch, and gramma, meaning character, is a diagram used in cladistics, or categorization into clades, to show relations among organisms. All right. Yeah, so here's the 2 seemingly different, though identical cladograms, illustrating the idea that neither shape nor a particular arrangement of the terminal branches really matters. So the shape here, the terminal, the endpoints, at the bottom or the top don't really matter. You can have them sideways like that, or you have it like this. It means the same setup here. Yeah, so basically, you could have it like this. This means the same thing as if you had it in between here. So basically, what this means is that at each of this V, that means there's a node. There's a node in between here. So it branches out. So you can do it in this rectangle or this setup like that. So if it splits up here, so this is splitting up with this means there is going to be a setup like that. Yeah, so that the middle node is between it, or the common ancestor is between them. So very interesting, or the root. So yes, these are identical, equals. Yes, very, very fascinating. All right, let's continue further. So when phylogenetic trees are reconstructed, multiple trees with different evolutionary histories can be generated based on the principle of parsimony, or parsimony, or Occam's razor. We'll get to that. Just read this again. So when these phylogenetic trees are reconstructed, multiple trees with different evolutionary histories can be generated. Yeah, so you could, when you're constructing them, you can develop multiple different types, because again, you don't know the exact creation of any personal individual, or even a statistical one, based on a whole large of data points that you're basically trying to figure out which one came from where. So based on the principle of parsimony, or parsimony, or Occam's razor, the tree that is favored is the one with the fewest evolutionary changes needed to be assumed over all traits. So it needed to be assumed. So fewest assumptions. Over all traits in all other groups. Basically the simplest one. Oh, no, not necessarily the simplest, just the one with the least assumptions, which you could have a complex one if you're not assuming anything. So computational algorithms can be used to determine how a tree might have evolved given the evidence. MES note, parsimony. Let's try that one more time. It's a hard word for me to pronounce. Parsimony. Parsimony means spareness, and is also referred to as the rule of simplicity. Let's go over further on Occam's razor, because a lot of people get this confused. So Occam's razor, also pronounced this one, also written as Occam's razor, the spelling, or Occam's razor, or the principle of parsimony, or law of parsimony, is the parsimony is the problem-solving principle that entities should not be multiplied beyond necessity. Or in other words, you can't keep assuming stuff. Sometimes inaccurately phrased as the simplest explanation is usually the best one. The idea is, I'll just put this here, is interesting. So sometimes inaccurately paraphrased. So that isn't inaccurate, because it's not always the simplest one. It's the least assumptions. Because the idea is attributed to English Franciscan friar William of Occam, from 1287 to 1347. Yeah, this is from birth to death, and that's how many years is that? That is going to be think about 50, now 60 years old. Yeah, so 60 years. A scholastic philosopher and theologian who used a preference for simplicity to defend the idea of divine miracles. So that's a very interesting one. So yes, it's not the simplest method, because divine miracles, yeah, it's not necessarily that simple. Well, but the idea is, again, you have less assumptions. So that he was using that just because you could assume like, okay, there actually were miracles back then. Yeah, or even whenever someone brings up the idea of miracles. So this philosophical raiser advocates that when presented with competing hypotheses about the same prediction, one should select a solution with the fewest assumptions. So yes, fewest assumptions. And that this is not meant to be a way of choosing between hypotheses that make different predictions. Yes, the idea is to have a framework of selecting different competing hypotheses for the same prediction. Remember, you can have you can have many different theories of what is the reasoning behind any specific endpoint. But then the one that you have to try to validate if it's the correct one or not. One method is the Occam's razor, basically the one with less assumptions. And in philosophy, a razor is a principle or rule of thumb that allows one to eliminate or shave off unlikely explanations for the phenomenon or unnecessary actions. All right, let's continue further. So phylogeny provides the basis of biological classification. I'll just bold this here, basically categorizing it or giving labels to specific organisms and so on, which is based on Linnaean taxonomy that was developed by Carlos Linnaeus in the 18th century. This classification system is rank-based, with the highest rank being the domain, followed by kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. I actually went over this earlier in the video. All living organisms can be classified as belonging to one of three domains. That's the highest one. Archaea, originally Archaea bacteria, and then also bacteria, originally Eubacteria, and Eukarya includes protists, fungi, plant, and animal kingdoms, and this is again the ones with a nucleus there. So a binomial nomenclature is used to classify different species. Based on the system, each species is given two names. So binomial is two, by name. Or binomial, I think that's it's related to two names. So it's given two names, bold that here. One for its genus and another for its species. And a number of species at the bottom of these rank-based setup right here of the major ones. So you have the domain. So you have domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and then species. And then by convention, what you'll have is a binomial nomenclature or naming setup. So each species, I'll bold this one here, is given, I'll bold that, and I'll bold this as well, so it's related to the bold two names. It's given two names, one for its genus and another for its species. For example, humans are Homo sapiens, with Homo being the genus and sapiens being the species. So Homo genus, sapiens species. By convention, the scientific names of organisms are italicized. So it's italicized, and put it sideways like that, like this, or italicized with only the first letter of the genus capitalized. So only the first letter. So then you have Homo is the one that's capitalized. And they're both italicized. So just Homo sapiens, it's italicized, like that's scientific names are italicized. So both of them. So then notice the Homo sapiens, and notice the H is capitalized, the first one. Fascinating stuff.